Welcome to the Central Pennsylvania Real Estate Investors Meetup podcast, keeping you up to date with what is happening in the York, Lancaster, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania real estate markets.
Welcome to the Central PA Real Estate Investors Meetup podcast. My name is Chad Eisenhart. I go to the local real estate meetups in York, Lancaster, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and rebroadcast the meetup in their entirety. Whether you're a new investor looking to get started or own 100 doors, meetups are a great place to connect with other like-minded individuals, including buying and selling your deals and staying up to date with what's new in your local market. I'm a buy and hold investor focused on single-family, multifamily, and self-storage in York, PA, and can be found at chadbuys.com. This week, I'm at the Real Estate Investing Mastermind group of Lancaster, hosted by Chuck Sierk. This evening's speaker is attorney Brandon Conrad of Saxton and Stump Lawyers and Consultants. Brandon discusses Everything Evictions, plus he debuts a new and exciting online portal for filing and tracking evictions that he and Chad Gallagher of Slatehouse Group are working on for landlords exclusively in the state of PA. In addition, Brandon discusses all the steps of the eviction process. Can you do the eviction process without an attorney? How much will it cost to involve an attorney in the process? Where do you file? What happens when the tenant appeals? How the tenant must escrow the rent immediately if they appeal? Why do you need to include the notice to quit in your lease? Why you need to treat your property as a business? What is pay and stay? Realistic options for collecting on judgments. And now on to this week's episode. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to get started now. So welcome, everyone. How many people are here for the very first time? Love it. Love seeing new folks. So we are the Real Estate Investing Mastermind group of Lancaster, and we're a monthly meetup group. We meet here every third Thursday. We are now landed here at the Hive, and the Hive is the home of the Slatehouse group, as well as a co-working space for other businesses, and many of them are real estate related. So it's a great place to, if you have any inquiries about the Hive, see Chad afterwards. I'm sure he'd love to tell you a bit about the co-working space. So just a couple ground rules as we get started. Cell phones, put them on vibrate or silent, please. Respect the facility rules. The biggest one is leave the room in the same condition or better than the way you found it. It's really important that as Brandon goes through his presentation, you're going to have questions, right? Speak up. Make sure that you ask those questions because it's very important that he's able to answer those questions for you. And if you don't ask, you won't get the answer. And there might be the possibility that somebody else also doesn't want to ask the very same question. You'll be helping out the other members in the room. Most importantly, please don't leave here without having met somebody brand new. This is an excellent networking opportunity to build relationships, as real estate is a huge relationships business. So a little bit about me. I am a licensed real estate agent with eXp Realty, been investing in property since 2002. My wife, Janet, in the back, she's your Lancaster real estate agent, and we together have opened the first branch for eXp Realty here in Lancaster. We're passionate about helping others achieve their dreams in real estate investing, and I'm primarily a buy and sell investor. So I've got a bit to learn as in our 2020 goals, we are adding to our portfolio of buy and hold properties. And my company is Sierk Homes, LLC. So what we're not. Brandon is the one. He is able to offer legal advice, but we are not, as REIMG Lancaster, offering professional legal tax advice. Please seek qualified help for that. We're not representing you in any way. We can work together. Definitely, if you have any interest in real estate investing and are looking to buy properties, we can help you with that. We're not here to take your money. It's a free meetup. It's a free opportunity to come together, learn, build relationships, as I said. And it's also not a place to come and go without getting out of your comfort zone. beat a dead horse by saying that it's very important to build your network, build relationships with the other people that are here. And we're not responsible for your actions, because the one thing that will make you or break you in this business is you. So if you don't take any action, that's on you. If you do take action, make sure that you do have the correct legal advice so you take the right actions so we can win in this game we call real estate. Okay? Chad, you want to talk a little bit about Red Rabbit?
I mean, if you're looking to save money on insurance, so we met Ryan, who runs Red Rabbit, about 6 months ago, and I'd say the biggest difference with him is he's actually an investor as well as an insurance broker, and that just was a huge game changer for us. He focuses the business on working with investors, and we saved about $5,000 a year by moving our portfolio to Red Rabbit. Worth the email. He'll get you a quote in a couple hours across basically insurance providers that focus on working with investors.
Okay, so that's Ryan at redrabbitinsurance.com. Write that email down as well as his numbers down there in the corner. Okay? So the one opportunity that Janet and I have been working on, we have built a program that is very, very similar. It's a creative way to be able to help people that can't get financing for properties today, and we're able to help investors achieve 10 to 20% cash-on-cash returns with monthly cash flows from anywhere from $300 plus per month. Okay, so we're helping people invest in real estate. If you're having difficulty finding cash-flowing deals, we are able to provide the deal that is turnkey, that has tenants, that you don't have to worry about monthly maintenance on. Please see me afterwards if this is a program that might be of interest to you. It is not a no money down program. This would be more of a traditional buy and hold investment with conventional type financing. Okay? So see me afterwards. It's not private lending. You would be purchasing a house that would be cash flowing in this situation. Okay, my email address is chuck.sierk@exprealty.com, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Brandon, you ready?
Man, that is not a good picture, but that's all right.
It's the one you gave me.
Before we bring this up, first weekend in April, there's flyers there. I really hope you all can make the conference being held in downtown Lancaster. There's a $50 off code if you type in Meetup. It's going to be 50 different speakers, 100 different vendors. We've been working on this for like 6 months. It's going to be amazing. I wish this existed 6 years ago when I was in real estate, just getting started. So first weekend of April, there's flyers right there. Brandon's going to be talking, as well as a ton of other speakers from all over the country coming in to talk. So.
Okay, let's please welcome Mr. Brandon Conrad, Esquire.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Brandon Conrad. I'm going to talk to you about evictions, leases, titling your assets, maybe some estate planning, court zip, which is some new technology that we've created for making landlord-tenant evictions more efficient. And I'm sorry I'm fighting a bit of a cold, but we also might talk about raising money. I don't know if people are doing that in this room, but some of the pitfalls you might face if you're starting to try to do some syndications. So, brief intro on me. I'm born and raised in Lancaster County. Went out to college at Northwestern outside Chicago, straight through to law school at Michigan. First 2 years of practice were in a big international firm in Chicago. Worked on 2 cases out there, 2 of the biggest companies in the world, like billion-dollar cases. Came back to Lancaster, got to try a bunch of cases in healthcare litigation. So I represented doctors and hospitals who were being sued for medical malpractice, millions of dollars at issue. And then now, the last few years, I've been doing more real estate and commercial litigation. So like a landlord-tenant case on a good day is thousands of dollars at issue. And so a lot of people look at my career and they say like billions of dollars and then millions of dollars and then thousands of dollars, like you're going the wrong way. And why is that? And really what it is what I learned. I made partner a few years ago, and I know other industries are like this. But if you're just doing high-level work, if you're just a service provider as a lawyer, that's not really how you build a business. It's not how you build a career. So, healthcare litigation, my firm, Saxton and Stump, are 45 attorneys. We already have the 3 biggest health systems in the region. So if I was going to go get my own clients, it was going to be in commercial and real estate litigation. And that's what I've done over the last few years. So that's a few things about me. My wife's from Lancaster. She's an attorney too. We have a couple boys, 6 and 3. Very committed to the area. So in the last year, I handled about 50 landlord-tenant issues. All the way from like a phone call, like, can I evict this guy for this, to, hey, I evicted this guy, I got a judgment at the MDJ hearing, and now he's appealed. What do I do? So one of the first things I always get asked, how much does it cost for an attorney? Can I just do this myself? And there's different answers to both of those things. So of the 50, the total revenue from that was about $45,000. So the average matter is less than $1,000. It's about 20%, 15% of my practice. Can you do it yourself? Yes, particularly the MDJ level. So let's walk through at a high level the eviction process. First, I want to get a sense of the audience we have here. So how many owners have ever had to evict a tenant before? Raise your hand. Have. How many have had to evict a tenant? And of those who have their hands raised, keep them raised if that tenant appealed to the Court of Common Pleas ever. Okay. Okay, so some experience there. Let me walk through just high-level timing of it. So rent is typically due the 1st of the month. You get the grace period to the 5th or the 6th. If your tenant in your lease waives the notice to quit, you can file a landlord-tenant complaint that day. Now, it depends. A lot of landlords don't want to file the complaint on the 6th because, that's like an aggressive action, and it depends on your relationship with the tenant. I would generally, when someone asks me, should I file it on the 6th, I generally say no if it's the first time they haven't paid rent on time. You write a letter, let them know, hey, this is your first time rent's been late. I'm going to file a landlord-tenant complaint in 10 days. This is assuming you've waived the notice to quit in the lease. But even if, say you have a tenant that you can't stand, they've been, making all this noise, they're a headache, they're always clogging the toilets, whatever they're doing, and you want them out, file it on the 6th. Because it takes at least 10 to 15 days for the MDJ judge to schedule the hearing. Once you go to that hearing, and you can go to the hearing yourself, no matter if you own the real estate as an LLC or through your LLC, you can go to the hearing yourself, and I'll walk you through how you do that. I'm generally not eager. I will do it, but like going to the MDJ courts is not generally where I want to spend my time. I generally like being involved from a counseling perspective, and then if it gets appealed to the Court of Common Pleas. So let me just back up. Am I like speaking total Greek to people, or do people understand where I am so far? Okay, we're good. So MDJ, there's 550 of them in the state. How many people know which MDJ their current investment properties are in? Raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty good number. And we'll go through the technology that will help us find that. So you file it on, say you file it on the 6th, or whenever you file it, the hearing is scheduled 10 to 15 days later and in front of an MDJ judge. You can go yourself, but there's a few things that you just always want to have if you go. Obviously, you're going to need the lease. You're going to need the ledger, how much they've paid. You're going to need any invoices, any type of bills, utilities outstanding. If there's any damage claimed, I mean, it's true in law as it is anywhere else. A picture tells 1,000 words. So if you have a picture of damage somewhere on your phone, that is worth more than you standing up and saying, hey, they bashed a hole in my wall. Like, let's see a picture of it. I'll always remember one of my first times doing this a couple years ago. There was roach infestation in an investment property in Harrisburg. And I'm in front of an MDJ, and I have a picture, and it's the only picture that the owner got from me, and it's a picture of one roach. And I said, do you have any other pictures for me? Like, this isn't that convincing. It's one roach. You're saying it's infestation, and you want $600 of damages? Like, he's like, no, that's all I got. So I get in front of, and they had the invoice from the pest control people. So I had that, and I had this picture, and I present it to the judge. And these judges are inundated with landlord-tenant complaints. They've seen it all. So I present this picture, I present the invoice. Yes, we want damages for this roach infestation caused by the tenant. And the judge just looks at me like, you gonna show me a picture of one roach? You know what we see in here? So we didn't get to reimburse. I think he took, of the 600, I think he still gave us like 300. But any pictures displaying any type of damages are worth a lot of money. One confusing part of MDJ court, if you go yourself, you may think you get a judgment for possession. And this tenant's been bothering you for months or years, and you get a judgment for possession. You think you're good. There's still so many steps to go. So for 10 days after that judgment, the tenant can still appeal, or he can pay off the judgment. So if you go in and just get what's called pay and stay, they can pay off that judgment and you can't evict them. And they can actually pay it off for 20 days, because if your judgment is on the 20th, you can't get your order for possession for 10 days. After you get that order for possession and it's served, you can't evict them for another 10 days. And as long as they pay off the judgment, it could literally be the sheriff's coming up the property and they come out and give a check. You can't evict them, they get to stay. So if it's someone that you definitely want to get out of there because they're causing you headaches, you do not want pay and stay. And MDJ judges do not like awarding possession. They want to try to give tenants the opportunity to pay and stay. So you really need to know the language, and if you're going to try to say, no, I want this tenant out, you've got to make sure the MDJ literally has to check the right box, and usually they check the wrong box if you don't make it clear that you want possession, no pay and stay. Now that's if the tenant does not appeal. So remember I said after the judgment from the MDJ, there's a 10-day period where the tenant can appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. And what happens then? First of all, you can no longer represent yourself, and you need an attorney in the Court of Common Pleas, unless you own the property individually. So there is a risk-benefit there that we can get into in terms of titling your properties. You know, any lawyer, pretty much any lawyer I think, would tell you to own investment properties in an LLC. The only downside to owning them in an LLC is that if your tenant one day appeals, you do need to hire an attorney. So no wonder attorneys say, you know, put it in an LLC, because then they get hired if there's an appeal. I mean, on the whole, I still think the benefits of holding it in an LLC and the protection that gives you is worth the outside chance that you might have to hire an attorney, because most people don't want to represent themselves once it gets to the Court of Common Pleas anyway. There are much more strict procedural rules Filing a complaint it's a much more complex complaint. The hearings in front of the judge are much different. The rules of evidence are different. So you do need to generally want to hire an attorney when there's an appeal. What happens then, though? So MDJ judgment on the 20th, they have to appeal by the 30th of that month. Within 20 days, you're supposed to file a complaint against the tenant. Now, filing a complaint does cost money. And I know we've talked about costs a little bit, maybe. I know I at least mentioned it. And people always ask, like, what does it cost? And it depends on what your issues are and what the lease is. And people always want to know, like, your hourly rate. And I always say, like, I work really fast. So, like, I'm very efficient. Like, I'm 36. I grew up with computers, and, like, I can do stuff quickly. So there's a 65-year-old who maybe does 2 of these a year, and his rate's $200 an hour, and he takes 2 hours to do something. And I'm a 36-year-old, do 50 a year, and it might take me 30 minutes. Well, it doesn't matter if my rate's 3-something. It's still going to cost less money. But so that's my overall thought on that. It's just I try to do things just in my practice. I try to do things not by the hour. I try to say, like, how much is it worth to you to file this complaint? Like, I'll tell you, it's going to cost this much. And then if it ends up costing more, the risk is on me. Like, if I wasn't as focused as I should have been, it took a half hour longer, I don't bill you an extra half hour. It's just, it costs that. So I try to do a lot of fixed fee stuff, especially with landlord-tenant. So we have the complaint, supposed to be filed within 20 days. Some landlords will decide, well, I don't want to pay you, Mr. Attorney, $500 or something, whatever it is, to file the complaint. I'd rather just wait, just sit on it, because when you appeal, the tenant does have to escrow rent. So whatever the rent payment is in the lease, they have to, in order to maintain an appeal, they have to escrow that amount. So they say, hey, that tenant's going to escrow that amount every month, or the appeal gets kicked. Let's just let them keep escrowing it, and let's hold tight on the legal fees. And I say, fine. That's perfectly acceptable strategy. I want you to know that that could go on forever, in theory, and they're not required to escrow any of their utilities, trash, any other fees, renter's insurance if that's in your lease. And so on a monthly basis, you could still be losing $200 to $250 a month because they're not going to be paying that. Any tenant I've seen in escrow, they are just paying the rent. If you try to get them to pay their utilities, they're going to say, we're in evictions, I'm not paying that. And you really can't get them to pay that without filing a complaint. Now still, that trade-off might be worth it, and I don't begrudge landlords who say, that's fine, I'd rather do that than pay you $500 or $1,000. You know, that's fine. But then I end up, those landlords come back like 6 months later and they say, you're telling me that tenant paid the escrow payment on time every month? And I say, yes. Well, I've lost $1,500 because they're not paying utilities. And I say, yes, we had that discussion. And they say, well, what are we going to do? The lease is over. Isn't there a way to get them out? And I say, yes, it's to file a complaint. It's going to cost about $500. Do you want me to file it now? And then they say yes, and then I feel like we've wasted 6 months when they could have gotten them out and got a new tenant in. So generally I think the best strategy is when there's an appeal, bite the bullet, file a complaint, because if they don't respond, that tenant needs to respond to the complaint within 30 days. If they don't respond, you get it kicked, no matter what. So a lot of tenants don't know how to respond to a complaint. Even if they do respond, you get it in front of a judge quicker, usually within a month or 2. It's not like MDJ. They don't have to schedule it within 10 to 15 days. It's usually more like 2 months for a hearing. But all of those, and this doesn't say anything about my skills as a litigator, although I think I'm a skilled litigator. All of those hearings, the landlords win. Once you get there, if the tenant's not paying, the landlord wins. So you just have to do it. I know people who, and I don't blame them. I'm sort of a softie at heart too, underneath it all. But they feel bad for the tenant. This tenant's going to be out on the street and blah, blah, blah. And I say that's fine. Like if you feel, if this isn't a business for you and you feel this like family connection to the tenant, don't evict them, don't hire an attorney. I only hire me or only hire some other attorney if you understand that that tenant living rent-free for months on end is not how you want your property to be used. Like your only cash flow for an investment property for that unit is that tenant paying their money every month. If they don't do it, that investment is a bad investment. So let me look at my next things here a little bit.
Brandon, do you need some water?
No, I got some water.
Okay, gotcha.
It is, my throat's hurting a little. Yes. No, ask questions, by the way. That's litigator.
For the escrow part would be, how does it work in terms of if they don't put the escrow in, or how do you get paid during the escrow from the attorney?
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a little
Great question. So let's say the rent is $800 a month. That first day that they appeal, they are supposed to escrow $800 a month that first day. However, they can say that they're poor, and which they all are because they'd pay their rent otherwise. And if they say that they're poor, then they don't have to pay the full $800 for another month. So you don't get that first month escrow. Now, I think it's supposed to be technically like 20 days in, they have to pay 1/3 or 2/3. But basically, you don't get the full $800 for the first 30 days. And that's escrowed, but then and it's escrowed with the prothonotary, or like the clerk of the Court of Common Pleas. So you can get that money. You have to file a document. It'll take a 60-year-old attorney. They'll bill you a half hour for it. It takes, I would do it for like $40 because it's an easy form. Actually, most people can do it themselves if they'd like. But it's just a form that tells the prothonotary, release the escrow funds, gives the address, who to make the check out to, and it's an order. It's pretty straightforward. And then from that point on, you don't have to file that document again. So if it goes on for 6 months, every time the escrow hits, the prothonotary automatically distributes a check to whoever the address and the check was in that order. Some of the learning, a couple years ago, some of the learning pains when I first went through this process was, there's a property manager and there's an owner. And so sometimes it's who do you want the check made out to? Is it the owner or the property management group? You gotta make sure that's clear. Generally, it is the property management company because they're the ones who collect the rent. But, yeah.
You said about once the tenant appeals, does it automatically set up where no matter when lease ends, they're in it until the whole court case is settled?
Yeah.
Automatic thing? Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We just went through it. I thought maybe it was that one. We could still gotten out of that if we've done something different.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. Like you think, and I have this now, I have a couple cases pending where they're like, well, the lease expires in 3 months. And so we'll send them a notice. And I'm like, yeah, they might leave when you send a letter saying your lease is done. Or they might stay and you still have to eject them. So
you couldn't eject them with an appeal pending.
Correct, yeah. You can't file a separate action while that one's pending because they'd just be like, well, just file your complaint here.
I didn't do us any good.
Right.
Brandon, can you just briefly talk about, when you talk about appeal, I know it kind of scares people, like the number of appeals in the state of Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So
Evictions that go to appeal.
So part of how I grew my practice a couple years ago, started growing it. And I'm not ashamed to admit this because I'm just a hustler. So Lancaster County, you can see landlord-tenant appeals. And so I would see the tenant appeal, I would see who the landlord was, and I would write them a letter. And I would say, I would like to represent you. If you want to take care of this appeal, give me a call. And a lot of people do that because most people don't have most real estate attorneys do not like litigation. Most real estate attorneys want to do transactions and they want to do financing documents. I'm more of the litigation side, so like the loans and the deals. I have a partner who I give all that stuff to. I like the disputes. What was the question? What percentage? Percentage. So there's 250,000 landlord-tenant complaints filed a year. And like in Lancaster County, there's anywhere between 3 and 5 appeals a month. So there's only 60 appeals in all of Lancaster County. Probably statewide, there's 1,500 to 2,000. So it's rare. That's why like nobody does 50 of them, or for the most part. You have to be a little sociopathic, which fortunately I am. What was the question? You had your hand up?
Yes. I wanted to touch back when we were talking about the MDJ. You had said, like, you file, you win, they have 10 days to pay. But you had also briefly said about 20
Yeah.
days or something.
I was thinking that I might have made that a little more confusing than I meant to. So they have 10 days to appeal before you can get your request for order for possession. But once you get that order for possession, and they could pay in those 10 days, but then once you get your order of possession, they can still pay for the 10 more days up until the sheriff's coming up the driveway and they come out the door and say, oh, sorry, here it is.
And you had said, like, when you file on somebody when you're sitting in front of that judge, like, you have to, if you're on like month-to-month lease or something, you have to ask for possession. I mean, like,
yeah.
Like that's what he said about the wording, like, you have to say they're month-to-month, like.
I would even say, I want to be clear, Judge, I don't want pay and stay. I want possession. They have breached their lease, multiple times, whatever it is. And when I've done it, I've never had a judge be like, well, no, this is pay and stay. But then I get owners who say, well, he said he only does pay and stay. And I was like, well, that can't be true. Next time, just let me go for you. But did you have a question, sir?
You kind of answered it.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that like a first offense was automatically a pay and stay. But
Yeah.
maybe that's the impression the judge.
Yes, a lot of judges want to say that.
So
That's
you
not the
can't
law.
ask for, no, I don't want possession.
Yeah, that's not the law. If you breach the lease, breach a condition of the lease, and it gets a little technical because there's breaches of conditions and breaches of covenants, but non-payment of rent is a condition of the lease. So
And then you just have to file, you can file for possession right away, and you have to wait 10 days then for them to be removed. Is that right?
oh no, you still have to wait the 10 days.
You have to wait this, okay.
You still have to wait the 10 days and then another 10 days for the order for possession.
Okay.
Now there's some legislature working its way through Pennsylvania to make the process, to shorten that time. And I've sort of gotten a little involved in that. But it's also like one of those time sucks where you're just like, well, yeah, I could spend 100 hours working on this statute that no one, it's unlikely to result in any changes. Or I could try to make money. So
what you choose?
right. So.
Get pay and get out?
Can you pay and get out? Well, so that is the risk, right? So if you say, I want possession and there's nothing they can do to stay, no tenant's going to pay. Because why would they? So like if you go for possession because that tenant's been such a headache, now you'll get a judgment, but they'll never actually pay that judgment. So it might say $2,000 for unpaid rent and possession, and there's no pay and stay option. So that tenant does have a judgment against them for $2,000. And you can pay me $3,000 to try to go collect it because it's so hard to collect from tenants. Or you can try to collect it on your own. I always say landlords should they should run their operation as if they're never going to collect a judgment. So if you get a judgment from a tenant, the chances that you're going to actually collect that money are extremely low, and it takes an extremely high amount of resources to collect it. Yes?
2 questions, I'm sorry. So is it possible to do the possession and the judgment in the same hearing, let's say, like this would be?
Yeah, it would be the same hearing.
Okay. And the second question was, does the sheriff has to evict within 10 days, or they can wait 15, 20, whatever the sheriff has time kind of thing would be? Sorry.
Yeah. Generally, my experience has been when you get that order for possession, they schedule it sort of right at the right date. It might be a day or two later. I have not experienced where they took more than 15 days after you get the order for possession. That would frustrate me because I think of it, I'm a math guy, like economics major guy. So like if your rent's $900, I think of every day wasted, that's you're wasting $30 a day. And that's frustrating to be like, oh, that tenant just stole another $30 from me. Yes?
2 questions. One, if you just go for possession and forget about the judgment part,
Yeah.
does that make it easier?
I guess it could. Most judges don't have a problem awarding back rent. So like the money part, I mean, I guess it does make it easier because you don't have to, maybe the tenant's saying, well, I paid utilities or I paid the rent, whatever it is. They're disputing the number. And if the number doesn't matter to you, you could just go for possession.
Some judges maybe feel bad, so they're like, oh,
Yeah.
stay if they're not going for money.
Yeah. Let me tell you one horror story, though. So I had a very, very wealthy, I represent, by the way, anyone from 1 unit to 5,000 units. So I don't discriminate on any basis. And I had one guy who was a big fish. And he had a tenant who was, was not the best property. It was an investment property. He was trying to fix it up. But he had a tenant there, and he also owned a gas station, like there. And the tenant was like violent, would like come over and like steal things from the gas station and, was always drunk. And he's just like, this tenant is the worst. And he wasn't paying rent. He's like, this tenant's the worst. And for whatever reason, he's like, I was just focusing. He owns like a portfolio of gas stations. It's like, I was just focusing on the businesses. I can't do these tenants. So 6 months go by, he doesn't pay rent. He finally goes up to the tenant. He's like, I don't want any trouble. Here's $3,000. Can you please leave? And we can talk about cash for keys, but this tenant says, no, this is great. I'm staying. I don't have to pay rent. What are you going to do? So he stays, and this guy goes to the MDJ hearing. I didn't know him at the time. He goes to the MDJ hearing, and he's like, I know I'm never going to get money, Judge. I don't care about the money. I just want possession. And so the judge awarded him possession, and said $0, and did not establish the rent.
So when he appeals it, he doesn't have to pay.
He doesn't have to escrow. So then the tenant appeals it, and there's no escrow payments. And so it's going on for months, and the tenant's still there. But that was when I was like, man, I am in a crazy world because this tenant, I mean, he was literally like the people working at the gas station were fearful of this guy. They're like, he comes in, at 2 a.m., he's stealing everything. We just say take it because like we don't want to. It's not worth dying over chips. Like, and so he's stealing. And when the sheriff finally came to evict that guy, we understood why he didn't take the $3,000 because in this 800 square foot space, he had 3 subtenants that he was leasing it out to, drug dealer type tenants. So he was an entrepreneur because he was paying no rent and he was getting $1,800. I always think like if you just applied yourself like to something legal, you could have been successful.
Second question was, if you have a month-to-month lease, like you set it up that way from the start, so it's always that way, there is no year-long thing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Is it easier to get tenants out in that situation? Under that circumstance?
I wouldn't say necessarily, because like if a tenant's going to stay, if they're not going to listen, if they're not going to follow the law, and they're just going to hold over anyway, I don't know that it's that much of an advantage to do month to month.
And the judge could pay and stay. You know, if you're doing a breach lease, then there's no pay and stay.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
We didn't hear that back there.
He's saying if you're doing a month-to-month lease and the lease is expired, then there's no pay and stay because there's no lease anymore. And there's also I've seen some leases where if you hold over, you're agreeing, and I mean I've seen this in provisions, you're agreeing to like a 50% increase in your rent. So the rent automatically goes up. And that way, if they do stay and you get a judgment against them, the monthly rent is, if it was $1,000, now it's $1,500. So when they escrow, if they appeal, they at least have to escrow $1,500 instead of $1,000, and you're more than covering your utilities. Okay. So the MDJ courts, I say they're like the Wild Wild West. Like there's 550 different judges. They're not all attorneys. They're not all smart. They're community leaders. And so they don't always follow the rules. They don't always know the evidence. So it can be challenging. Even someone who does it every day, it can be challenging. You definitely want to have different boroughs, towns. Everyone has different licensing requirements, inspection, registrations, business, all of that. Yes?
It's the same across the state of Pennsylvania. It's the same process in York, the same in Philly, correct?
Philly's different. But what process? Do you mean
Just from
MDJs?
Filing for eviction, going to the hearing, filing for the whole step of the process.
Yeah, so everywhere except Philly's pretty similar.
It's supposed to be, but
Yeah.
as someone who files in a lot of places, so in Reading, we've lost a case because we had the wrong color ink on the signature page. I'm not even kidding. So like the judge will take their own leniency. The next level up judge would say, Reading judge, what are you doing? That's crazy. But you still lost yourself a month or two. So we found that some judges have their own unique perspective of the law, but the basic law they're supposed to file everywhere but Philly.
Some people ask, some landlords have asked me, well, I don't want to pay you to do it, but could my sister go represent me? She's in law school, or can, whoever go represent me? And the answer is yes. But one of the tricks that all the tenants, so the tenants get attorneys by like legal aid. A lot of them end up with an attorney. And those legal aid attorneys are good attorneys. They're good landlord-tenant attorneys. They know the law inside and out. And one of their tricks is if anyone other than the owner shows up without a signed authorization, they get it kicked. They get the case dismissed. So you need that authorization if you're going to have anyone but you go. Now, most property management companies, I know Slatehouse, they know that you need the authorization, you need it signed by the owner, but it's just something to keep in mind. Should we go through court zip? You guys want to see this? So court zip is, oh yeah, question.
Just one last question. Just going back to the Court of Common Pleas. When their rent is being escrowed,
Yeah.
and let's say they default on paying rent into the escrow, what happens to that case?
So if they don't pay the escrow on the day that it's due, which is like 30 days, you can file a document on the 31st day that terminates the appeal. Now,
How do you know?
you got to call. You have to have a really good attorney who's on the ball, has good systems. No, but if it's just you, you've got to call or check the online docket. But the online docket can be like 3 or 4 days late. So I usually have someone call that 31st day because that's a huge. If they don't escrow it on time, we're getting the case dismissed right then. Now it then gets kicked back to the MDJ. You then still have to get your request for possession. If they had to pay and stay, they still have time to pay off the judgment up until the time of eviction, which is really frustrating because sometimes the judgment might be from like 3 months ago. The judgment doesn't like stay updated to the current date. Yes? Another?
Did you just say that, so when they don't pay, did you just say it goes back to the MDJ?
Yeah, so it's actually the MDJ.
Is it supposed to do that every time, or is it just, because I had one where actually, like the Lancaster County Sheriff came down and kicked her ass out.
So they're not, I've had two where it's actually the Court of Common Pleas sheriff goes because we're at a hearing and the judge orders immediate possession. And so the file does not get kicked to the MDJ and we get a sheriff to go like that day. Now, if the tenant's attorneys, like the legal aid attorneys, say that's completely illegal and that the judge is wrong and they shouldn't do that, and I sort of think that they're right, but some judges have done it, and if a judge says you get immediate possession and they don't kick so when the order says immediate possession, the court of common pleas will not kick it to the MDJ. Or in one of my cases, they did kick it and the MDJ said, well, it says immediate possession, that's not us. And they kick it back. And then you're like calling back and forth and you're on this fixed fee. You're like, this risk is on me. So it can be tedious. But yes?
Question, so if tenant owes me money, I get the judgment, I get it, you probably not gonna get paid, right? But is it possible to get that on their credit? And what's the process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't get involved with the credit reporting stuff. I should, though. I should learn that. Yeah. Do you know?
I mean, a good property management company will have an agreement with a collections agency who will then push it to the collections agency, at which point it will go on their credit, and the collections agency will follow up. We see about, I mean, it depends, I would say 10% at the most ever get paid. 5% is probably a more normal number. Not the person getting evicted is not somebody who's typically going to buy a house anytime soon. Those are the things you look like. That's what really causes someone to pay it off. What we see more likely is someone tries to go get a car loan, and they can't get one, they get really ticked off, and sometimes they actually get paid. But it's a low percentage, but I would say most property management companies have an agreement with a collections agency, or you could too. You just push it with a collections agency, and then their big trick is to get on the credit report.
Yeah.
With the pay and stay, does that also include any other expenses that are incurred? Is that like a running tally?
Yeah, so pay and stay includes anything up until that judgment, but then it doesn't include anything after that. Now, it can include, like if you use an attorney and you have in your lease an attorney fees provision, it can include attorney fees. And I mean, we can go over what to include in leases, like the notice to quit thing always, attorney fees always, and make the attorney fees provision clear so that not only are they going to pay your attorney fees if you have to evict them or collect money, but if they bring a suit against you, and landlords do get sued by tenants, it's not all the time, but like this implied warranty of habitability and other things, they get sued. If they bring a suit against you, and they lose, you get to collect attorney fees from them. People ask about, I mean, I'm a litigator, people ask about attorney fees all the time, like, well, if we win, do we get our attorney fees? Or they're suing me for no reason, do I get attorney fees? In the US, our system is there's no attorney fees unless it's by contract, so by lease, or if it's by statute. Certain statutes say, hey, if you recover under this statute, attorney fees are in play. You can recover attorney fees. So I get frustrated when I see leases that don't have attorney fees because it's less leverage for me. I like to be able to talk to a tenant or the tenant's attorney and say, look, not only are you going to have to pay $2,000 for your rent, but like, it's going to be $600, $800 for me, and it's a little bit more leverage. Okay. So court zip. I talked earlier how I grew up with computers. I was like one of the first millennial. And so I've always liked technology and thought of technology ideas, was always jealous. Like I thought I created Facebook before that they did, and I just didn't get it out quick enough, but I had that idea. CoreZip, I got involved with landlord-tenant stuff and got the opportunity to work together with some tech folks. So there's 550 Pennsylvania MDJs. I would say 80% of people who own property wouldn't be able to tell you the MDJ that their property's in. They certainly wouldn't be able to tell you what the fee is to file a landlord-tenant complaint, which varies depending on which 550 district you're in. And when they go to try to find what MDJ am I in, there's no easy way to do that. It's not geocoded, and there's no easy way to get the fees. So we created technology that does a number of things, but the first thing is you type in your address, and it tells you which of the 550 MDJs you're in. It automatically populates you into that. Yeah, so let's do it. Go to landlord-tenant complaint, and let's do Lancaster. So you do have to select your county. And then whatever your home address, your investment property address is. I mean, it's Google. It's easy. It's like a Google map that's just there. It even like pre-populates the address for you like Google does. So it tells you which MDJ you're in. Scroll down. And it lets you fill out the MDJ complaint online and then submit it online. So for those who have filed evictions, generally you have to print it out and handwrite it, or you can create some online form yourself. CoreZip just says, we have it all for you. Do name, address, security deposit, monthly rent, number of tenants. So depending on how many tenants, the fee changes, which the MDJ won't tell you that. But when they get your form and it says 2 tenants and your check is for 110 and it should be 115, they'll mail it back to you and say, hey, your check was not high enough and you wasted 2 weeks. So this is a way to avoid that. And 2 weeks is 14 days times 30, $420. Okay, lease is residential, notice to quit. If they're tenant breach conditions, you can write like whatever it was. You don't even have to use apostrophes. Yes, if there's damage to your property in addition to unpaid rent, you add it in. Attorney fees, come on, give me something.
What do you want?
300. Sign and payment. Check the box. $16.99. We're still working on the price. I think so. You'll see here. Once you pay and submit, it hits the MDJ docket that day. So.
No, if you're an attorney or property manager, it's replaced to include a 207 if somebody else is.
Yeah, you can do. You're going to have the ability to have attachments. So an entry of appearance for me, or for a property manager, the document that they fill out.
Can you include the $60 as an attorney fee to them? That you're paying?
It would be included as a cost.
Okay, but are they on the docket then, those costs too, or not?
My argument will be yes, because like if you FedEx your MDJ, your mailing costs are part of the cost of getting an eviction. So whether you FedEx it or have a courier go, or if you drive there, if you drive 30 miles and you have your gas mileage, like in theory, you're supposed to be able to recover the cost associated with the eviction. So, $16 should be added onto there. And then this is the actual legitimate form. Every MDJ that we've shown this to has said, you can file this. We love this idea. We'd prefer if it came in this way. We have so many hundreds of people coming in to our courts every day and calling us and saying, is this the right court? And we get all these wrong filings in our court. They love this technology. It was a learning experience for both, the whole team, because we thought of this technology has been there for a year, and we've probably had 80 meetings with different levels of judiciary, legislative. I don't think we got the governor involved, but it was close. So you can check that on the other side. You just have to check it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it the right color ink?
I know. So we haven't gone to Berks County yet. We've gone to some.
So Lancaster and New York are the first two counties to go live.
Yeah, so the way that the government, Pennsylvania state government, so this is free to the Commonwealth. Right now they have this archaic system that doesn't make any sense and causes all these problems and probably costs landlords and court system like $10 million of time and employee. I mean, there's 550 of these courts, and there's at least 1 or 2 employees that their full-time job is picking up the phone. Is this the right court? How much is the fee? And I don't want to say that we're going to take away that job, but that job they'll be allocated to more productive uses of their time. I hope. Or maybe not. Maybe the taxpayers will save. I mean, that's technology, right? Maybe they'll save a lot of money for the Commonwealth. But anyway, it's free for the Commonwealth, and it was still a really tough process because, even the judge, like the Supreme Court judges were like, we love this idea. I'm so glad you brought this to us, and it's free. How could we say no? But what happens if other people in Pennsylvania come to us with really good ideas? We might have to let them do their really good ideas. And we're just like, isn't that like that's business, that's life. Like, we're making your life better for cheaper. Like let's step into it. But it's been a learning experience for me and the board just to be like, man, it's, we thought we were in June, and then July, and then August, and then they said, okay, you're good for Lancaster and York. And so we've been trying to get this pilot program going in York and Lancaster. And January is the first month. Like by February 1st, I would think we'll be live, ready to go. You can use it now just to create the form, but then you have to print it and mail it. But if you didn't know where your MDJ was, you didn't know what the fees were, and you wanted the easy form to fill out, you could do it now. But our long-term play is the savings that you get when you can actually just submit it. Because that's the other thing. MDJ courts are open 9:30 to 4:30, and I'm not judging at all. But if you call them at 2:30 on a day, you're not getting a call back that day. So then it's the next day. Well, landlords, a lot of them have full-time jobs where they can't call between those certain hours. So the benefit of this is you get home from your job in 10 minutes, you can shoot this off.
So it's supposed to appear on the docket starting February, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we will have 6 MDJs. It's funny. We've gotten approval from everyone who needs approval. For the whole state. And all the judges that need approval. The only thing that needs to happen is the MDJ computers themselves. They can only access a certain 5 websites. Now they're allowed to use this, but their computers are blocked. So they can't go to courtzip.com to download these things. And we're well, let them use that website. But to get a government person to actually do that for these courts it's mind-blowing mind-blowingly frustrating for entrepreneurs. I mean, like for people who are like, let's go, let's do it. It's been a challenge.
So now what about 10 days later after hearing?
Yeah, yeah, you can do your orders for possession through it.
So now what happens if you file, say, for 9 days, it's not, 10 days hasn't passed yet? Like you show up in person, you say you can't file it yet.
Yeah.
What happens if we try and do it online?
That's a good question. I think we should have it. We should have it where it's automatically blocked. Like, so one of the long-term, obviously this is still new, but one of the long-term benefits of this, and I don't know if Chad, if we want to show it on this slide, but like, you could have it where it actually tracks things for you. So it says the dates of everything. Ultimately, we'd like the MDJ clerks to just serve everything through this. Back to us. Like, don't send us letters and make us wait 3 days or 5 days. Just like.
So like our private management company's been trialing this stuff. And what we're really pushing is, you see, this is kind of like a workflow. So there's like a court date. So I could actually put a court date in here. So the court date is 22nd. So like where you see this actually going is eventually, what this starts to like do is actually create like alerts. So on day 10 you get an alert, on day 9 you try to file, and the system would say, hold, till day 10. One problem we have at Slatehouse is, in an ideal world you file on day 10. The reality is it ends up being day 13 or day 14, 16 is someone's vacation.
When you can't file on weekends, so like it ends up being
right. So this would kind of, it would create. There's actually like a really nice property management of this. What we're pushing on is to actually have. So day 1 it'll just be filing landlord-tenant complaints, order of possession, and civil.
Yes, so it can do civil complaints, which landlords usually wouldn't file them, but like any small claims matter goes to MDJ first. So $12,000 and below. If you have any dispute, you could use it. So mostly we'll be marketing this to commercial and residential landlords, owners who file landlord-tenant complaints, and then it's debt collectors. So like there's another 200,000 civil complaints filed by people who owe $6,000 and they have to file a civil complaint. They do it here. So it's interesting. Any questions about the technology? Yes?
So it's currently only available in Lancaster and York?
Well, and even as of today, it's not available because they won't whitelist courtzip.com. But like assuming...
Hoping for it to be available
Yeah.
February 1st.
Yeah.
But what about the fees? Are those fees accurate for all 550 MDJs?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and something that technology is great with, ultimately. So the fees at the 550 MDJs almost universally change by like a cent or sometimes more on January 1st every year. They go up, the price of inflation goes up, whatever. So now you'd have to call, like if you were a big property management company or you had a lot of different estates or investment properties, you'd have to call like however many MDJs you have property in and say like, what's the cost now? And this, the software will do it. I wouldn't say the software will do it automatically. We'll have to have somebody do that, but then it will be done for all 550. Now, we don't have a geocoded for all 550 yet because if you look at a map of like the population in Pennsylvania, there's like northern south central PA is like all trees and like hills. Like there's not a lot of people there. So, and it's really labor intensive. The reason probably nobody's ever created this system before is like it takes forever to geocode each of these districts. I mean, that's why we think, you never want to say you're immune to competition, but like nobody's gonna, I don't think, once we're in this space, I don't think anyone's gonna try to do this because of how long it would take them. I would say it'll be Lancaster, York, and then surrounding like Dauphin, Lebanon, Berks, Chester, Montgomery, Delaware, Bucks, Lehigh, Lackawanna. And then we'll eventually get out to Pittsburgh, along the turnpike. And then eventually we'll get all 550, but like, do you want to spend 100 developer hours for like Cambria County right now or whatever? If anyone's from Cambria, sorry.
But yeah, to answer your question, all the data is based on the actual magistrate. So it's customized.
Like by street. Like, so sometimes a certain side of the street is one, and a certain side of the street is the other. And it's like, you got to do that manually. It's labor intensive.
Are they going to be sent out like an emails with updates or sign up?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. First of all, you can email me with any questions about CourtZip, or landlord tenant in general, or any legal question in general. But you can also go to CourtZip if you don't want to contact an attorney, and put your email address in, and areas where you own property, and submit, and then you'll be kept updated on everything.
And we're supposed to then mail the complaint also to the tenant when it goes through to court?
So right now, it's the MDJ's responsibility to serve the complaint on a tenant. Which is different than any other litigation, incidentally. Like, it's generally our responsibility as plaintiffs. If we're going to sue someone, we have to serve them. But at landlord-tenant, the court does it. And so it will actually streamline that process, we believe, because the court will get it sooner, and then they'll be able to go over and serve it. Now, like long-term, it's still a dream of mine, is like tenants should be able to opt in to receive service electronically and save everyone money. Like if you're a tenant and you say, look, if I'm getting a complaint, just email it to me or text it to, whatever it is, and you can voluntarily agree to be served that way and save money. But that's down the road. Did I answer your question? I hope so.
My question is, I guess, to know, should I call then MG to verify that they will mail the complaint?
No,
Then
they will do it. And if they don't do it, it's CourtZip will ensure that they do it.
okay, that's the
Yeah. There'll be some notification system that says they did it, and then the court will send something that schedules the hearing date. Just like now, like if you mail, I just filed something last Thursday, Wednesday, and sent it priority mail, and the MDJ as of Tuesday were like, we didn't get it yet. And I was like, come on. And it's the rent is it's a commercial one, it's $10,000 a month. I'm like, every day is this. Yeah.
ideally it should send you notifications when something happens.
Yeah. So ultimately, you'll be able to put your email address or phone and get a text message like, your hearing is scheduled at this date, whatever the date is, and then a day before, you could get another text that says, don't forget, your hearing is this time at this date. Now, if you don't want that, you can opt out of it, but like you could get reminders, and if you wanted it, you could get like 2 hours before. Like,
supposedly this will be in February 1st. Those
yeah, like, what's that?
The exact launch date's be a little unclear. Just to put your email address in probably. That's the best way to do it. The exact day will be allowed.
Yeah, to put your emails in this system. Which if anyone wants to do, Chad's volunteered to sit up here and type in email addresses for anyone who wants it tonight. What time is it? Generally, people get tired of attorneys within like 45 minutes, so I'm very sensitive to the cutoff of when I'm talking too long. Yeah, right. It's a good point.
Chuck's picking up tonight.
Yeah. It's a fixed fee. Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Topic, but just back to leases, you kind of briefly touched on it. So you said notice to quit, attorney's fees.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we really need to make?
One of the things that I like in there is anything that can create leverage for us. So anything that if a tenant's going to sue you and say, you breached your implied warranty of habitability because you didn't have heat, even though like it's 66 degrees in there or whatever, I want to be able to say, well, yeah, but our lease says this, and you've been, it says if you have an extra person living there, it's an extra $200 a month. And we know, we have pictures that you've had your girlfriend living there. You didn't tell us for 6 months. So that's $1,200 that you're going to risk. Just anything or if it's a pet, like having these penalty provisions in there, and being really clear on the parts that matter. So the notice to quit really matters. If you don't have the notice to quit, it is so tedious to follow all the service rules and to make sure you're doing everything the right day. And tenants' attorneys are challenging a lot of these provisions, like the notice to quit. They try to say that was just a form contract. It was an adhesion contract. The tenant's not sophisticated. They didn't know that they were waiving it. They didn't understand what it was. You have to have really clear language of what the notice to quit means, what it really means.
Should they initial the notice?
Yeah, I always say, I would have them initial. I would have it in bold, notice to quit and attorney fees, have it in bold, have them initial it. Yeah, and those are the big ones. I like the renters. I like requiring the tenants to have renters insurance. So putting that in the lease, like you either get your own or we're getting it for you. Because there's just been too many times where something happens and it's not covered. Okay. A few horror stories I wanted to get to because I think there's some, I don't know if you would call them flippers, but people who look for tax sale, sheriff's sale, and they purchase properties there because it can be significantly discounted real estate. So the Supreme Court, this is just like the biggest nightmare case that just came down for the Supreme Court in the last month or two, and it's just fascinating to me. So like 2 years ago, somebody purchased a property at a tax sale, and the prior owner refused to leave. And so the new owner who bought that property said, you have to leave, I bought this property. And he retained an attorney, thankfully it wasn't me, he retained an attorney who said, I'm going to file a landlord-tenant complaint to get him out. So they filed a landlord-tenant complaint, and the MDJ said, hey, you got to get out, you're not paying rent, gave him possession. The former owner appealed to the Court of Common Pleas. The Court of Common Pleas said, you got to get out. You didn't pay your mortgage, this new owner has title, get out. Appealed to the Superior Court. Appealed to the Superior Court. The Superior Court agreed with the MDJ and the Court of Common Pleas and said, yep, you got to get out of there. This is 12 months later now that he's living rent-free. The Supreme Court actually took this matter up, which by then, as you can guess, like the new owner was just trying to make, a few $1,000s. You can't go to the Supreme Court over something like this. So he's like mercy. He doesn't even go to the Supreme Court. I was like, I would have gone for free just to get the experience. But so he's unrepresented, doesn't even go, and the Supreme Court rules you cannot file a landlord-tenant complaint in an MDJ court for a tax sale or somebody who doesn't have a lease. So he made them go all the way back to the Court of Common Pleas, and you actually have to file an action for ejectment. So it's not a landlord-tenant complaint. There's no lease. If there's anyone staying in the property after a tax sale or sheriff's sale, the proper way to do it now, it's always been the proper way, but just people were doing it other ways, is an action for ejectment. Same with squatters, action and ejectment. Same for any sibling, like, if there's a girlfriend or there's a daughter, or there's someone that you want out of the house, but there's no lease, you can't do those through the MDJ. Yeah.
What if, say I purchase a property and the old landlord just
Yeah, that's a challenging one. I would do an action injectment. I don't think he could do, I mean, in theory, there's an oral lease there. There's an agreement of a, there's some, way that you could go to the MDJ court and say, look, he had a lease for this. He was paying this. Now I want him out. He doesn't have a lease. Yeah. It's just always challenging. You don't, and the MDJs are just, it's a bit of a crapshoot. But yeah, there's no real harm to trying that. You'll know within 15 days to 20 days whether you can go that route or not. If the MDJ says no, you got to do this should be an action of injectment to file at the Court of Common Pleas, you can go do that. I had never thought of that, but I could probably charge double if I did that, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I think you could. Some people have asked me in the past about self-help evictions, and that's such a instinctive way to handle someone who's not paying and who's destroying your property, and you've paid for this property. And self-help just means you go and change the locks and you say get out. I know that's so appealing, and there's so many times I want to do it when I hear the stories, but you really can't do that. You expose yourself to punitive damages. And tenant legal aid people, they love cases like that. When they hear, and we see it on the listservs, when they hear a landlord has gone and done that, those legal aid attorneys get involved and they file every kind of document, and not only will you have to incur a lot of attorney fees, but then you're going to lose, no matter how good your attorney is, and then you're going to pay punitive damages, which if you kick out whoever it is and they're on the street and it's, punitive damages can be $10,000, $20,000. So it's just never worth it to do self-help eviction. Okay. Court Zoom. Does anybody have any questions of what we covered so far? Yes?
You mentioned about if there's somebody living who is not on the lease, let's say boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, moved in, and they're not on lease, you find out incidentally. You can't go to MDJ, you have to go to common court to evict both, or how does that then work? You go to one to MDJ for violating the lease, and you go to the other one to common.
So typically, I would say you go to so you're saying the one tenant isn't paying their rent? Like you have a reason to.
He just moved in with the girlfriend.
Like if the one guy if the only breach is he has a girlfriend.
Yes.
And he's doing everything else right.
Correct.
In theory, you could do an action of an injectment, but why don't you just say? Maybe you would just say, look, it's an extra $200 a month.
No, but if they don't want to pay, the boyfriend doesn't want to pay when he moved in or whatever it is.
Yeah, I would do a letter first and just say, we noticed that so-and-so has moved in. I'm going to, that's against the lease. You can either pay $200 a month, and here's your rent, or get them out. And then if they don't get out by the next month, then you have a case against the actual tenant.
And then you go to
with the MDJ and just say, he moved a girlfriend in. It's against the lease. He hasn't paid his rent, because if the rent was $800 and now it's $1,000, he hasn't paid. He's only paid $800.
And you hope that the boyfriend will move out after the MDJ gives possession.
One of two things will happen. I think the boyfriend will either pay the extra $200, or they will leave. Okay. As the landlord, I would rather them pay the extra $200, or even maybe an extra $100. Yeah.
Well, this is just my ignorance too, but if you're dealing with an abandonment, is there any way to speed up the process? Like if somebody has just left all their stuff and there's no sign of them, do you still have to go through the entire eviction process?
That's a good question. I dealt with one abandonment, and I looked at that. I would have to research it again. There are specific laws to abandonment, and like the statute lays it out. I don't want to say anything without looking at the statute, but there's actually a rule for abandonment and the steps that you follow.
But you have to somehow prove that it's actually been abandoned.
You do, and they're not paying rent though.
Right,
So you would have that, but then the rules for holding their stuff is all tedious too. So I wanted to, first of all, I'm happy to just, mingle with anyone who wants and everyone can talk again, or I'm happy to spend like 5 minutes on entity formation and how to hold your real estate. Do we have any what?
Patents, like any kind of proprietary,
Why, are you going to try to compete with us?
Well, no, what's stopping the government, like for example with like parking tickets, like government and EPA at least has adopted an online payment system. What's stopping the government from?
The government could do this. Like the government could they could do this. Now they've said they've bid it out like 4 years ago. And a technology company said to build what you're saying is like a $15 million job. And we did it for no cost to them. But yeah, no, we've talked about that.
Are you open to private or like public investors or your company, or have you?
So right now it's private. It's privately held. It's just the founders, and we'd like to keep it that way as long as we can because that's powerful.
Are you trying to scale it up beyond PA?
Yeah. So that's the big. So I was just talking. I was at my law school reunion, and there's a guy who's counsel for the Senate of California, and he's like, "You would not believe the mess that California is for landlord-tenant complaints. Like, we need this software. Come do it." And I was like. Part of me is like, well, that's exciting. The other part is like, is Silicon Valley going to just sit there while this Lancaster County startup comes in and says, hey, pay us? So I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of states. We've researched. We wanted to get Pennsylvania there first and have us up and running. And then once Pennsylvania's up and running, there's like at least 4 or 5 states we've researched where we would go next. Some states are advanced and they already have a good system. Georgia is a fiasco, and we know a general counsel down there who's like, when you're ready, I know everyone, we'll get you connected. But it's like, it is so time consuming, and just like I was talking about, like, it is hard to invest time in stuff that doesn't make you any income for the time, but hopefully one day. So just real quick, entity formation and how you own your real estate. I know I already said LLCs, the safest. Some landlords I've run into, they think they hold the investment properties jointly with the spouse. I really discourage that. If you do that, you're exposing your personal jointly held assets to any claims against you from the investment property. So if you're not going to do an LLC and you're married and you have jointly titled assets, personal assets like your home and accounts, you want to make sure that when you own the investment property, it's just in one of your names. And same with an LLC. Like I have married couples being like, I want to invest in real estate. We both want to be the members of the LLC. And I say, don't do that. Just have one of you. It's not worth the risk. Plus, it adds complication, honestly, to have multi-member. Like a single-member LLC, we can create with a enforceable operation agreement for relatively inexpensive. Once you get multi-members in there, the actual operating agreement just gets more complex because you have to talk about what do you want to have happen if this person dies or becomes incapacitated. Do the heirs get to purchase the interest or get to sell out their interest? Do they get to just step right in? I think I mentioned this is like 15% of my practice, but at least 30% of my practice is business divorce stuff. So where people went to have a business, they built some great business, and then the 2 business owners or 5 business owners can't agree anymore. And they're like, they're filing all types of different actions to try to break it up, and you got to evaluate the business. let's see. If you hold, and some of you might invest in property outside of Pennsylvania. Just from a state planning perspective, Pennsylvania is very easy probate state. So, sometimes people ask me about revocable trusts and different kind of trusts. If your property is in Pennsylvania, it's just LLC. You don't need a trust because the probate process is so easy if someone dies in Pennsylvania. You get the letters right away. There's other states where that's not the case. So I have clients where they hold real estate in Florida or Ohio. And that's where we do put those properties in trust to avoid probate in those other states, so that if someone would die, it's easy to administer the estate from Pennsylvania. Okay, and then just a quick thing about how my practice works, 20 seconds. So I have probably about 100 landlord clients, and some of them call me like once a year, and it'll be like a 5 to 10 minute conversation, and it's like $30 or $50, and that's all they are, and that's great, like because sometime down the road they might have a real issue. So I have, and then I have other people who they might have 4,000 units and they have 20 evictions a year, and I get to do a large volume of them. But from one unit, like if you don't have a real estate attorney and you want someone to just like, look, can I just ask him a simple question when it comes up? That's how I'm building my business, and I'm happy to help you. So I'll stick around for a little after. I have flyers in the back and my business cards in the back. And I'm on LinkedIn. My name's Brandon Conrad again. Feel free to connect with me. I do one marketing thing a year on New Year's Day. So I read 52 books a year, and I do a little summary of the 52 books. They're all different books. So if you like reading, you like books, you like recommendations, I love to hear recommendations. I love to talk about different kinds of books, what we're reading, what we're learning about.
And they can find that on LinkedIn.
That's on LinkedIn, yeah. I've written 2 articles in my career of LinkedIn, but it's been the last 2 New Year's Day articles. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Tune in next time to the Central Pennsylvania Real Estate Investors Meetup podcast, keeping you up to date with what is happening in the York, Lancaster, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania real estate markets.